one. Walk with me through the cellar door.
The storm is coming, Francis.
A portal to a more skeptical world.
Cellar Door Skeptics begins right now. Prepare for the revolution with your hosts, Christopher Tanner and Chris Hanna.
Oh, welcome. Welcome to another Cellar Door Skeptics. Thank you all so much for joining us tonight. Sorry, my computer glitched a little bit right there, so there was some weird awkwardness. I have no idea what it looks like on your side, but hopefully it's not too bad. Tonight, we're going to try and keep it a little bit lighter. Essentially, we are looking to discuss the my video lag. There's a huge video lag. Anyway, we're looking to discuss conspiracy theories amongst COVID armchair philosophers, right? And
yes.
But before we get into that, I have a little bit I want to share. So, if we talk about things that happened during quarantine, right? One of the things that happens for me during quarantine, everything froze. Am I froze? I can't tell.
Your audio is coming in good. It looks like you're getting yelled at by your significant other on the corner of the screen. You got kind of a hard look going, but we can hear you just fine.
Oh.
Well, we could. Then you started talking.
No, not so much. Recording live from Lagsville.
Yeah, recording live from the.
Yeah.
What?
Is he just trying out his favorite move that he learned from Pornhub, and that's called buffering?
Yeah, you got to turn off that background streaming, bro. I know it's free right now, but you got to turn.
I don't have any background streaming.
What did they? I don't know if they're still doing it. Pornhub has got what they gave their premium to everyone. They were like, "Stay home. You can access our premium for free."
Well, for a while there, they had changed their logo from Pornhub to Stay Home Hub.
Yeah. And the other thing, some of my favorite stuff they do is they keep track of kind of like who's searching for what and kind of publish it. And so they're like, the number one thing that we have more, or what did they say? They said that the searches for homosexuality and things like that come from the south of the United States, which they're like, that's weird. That shouldn't be like that, but it is.
It's almost like by making it so taboo, they made it more interesting. You know,
or what is it? He who shouts loudest
has the most to hide.
Yeah, or something like that. It was like he who smelt it dealt it, or whatever it is.
A coworker of mine and I were talking, or a friend of mine and I rather were talking about it, and I was like, I wonder if really the only reason why they know about all these things is because they just sit there and they hate masturbate while watching some of these videos. It's like, oh, I gotta tell my congregation they have to hate this. I hate myself so much for enjoying this. And yes, I censored the motions for the sake of the live broadcast.
You sound like that guy from Letterkenny, the pastor from the Letterkenny. Like, you specifically went to that. It wasn't like a normal pastor. You had to go to whatever his name is.
I was actually channeling like just a Southern Baptist preacher.
Yeah, I heard
no.
I heard Tennessee in there.
Well, I don't know, but I mean, yeah, okay. If you want to say I'm channeling Glenn, okay.
There we go.
I just want to praise.
Anyway, so as we talk, we share stories, right? Because there's unique things that happen, and my company is switching what they're using for video conferencing software, and it's kind of weird because my kids asked me this week how much I like to talk, because they're like, you still come home from work and talk all the time too. But I think I probably spent 6 hours a day every day last week on the phone for conference calls or whatever. Because that's my job. I mean, that's especially working remotely. All you can do is analyze things and share data and collaborate and stuff like that. And
so you're doing it on your cell phone more than you are on your computer?
No, I do it. I use both because I have to be able to mute really fast. And so like when I'm on my computer, I multitask. So I bring up the stream. If I have to share, I share, do whatever I have to do. But if the dogs bark, it's like, what do you do? So like I put the audio through my phone for my headset and then I hit it. And I have to charge my AirPods like 2 to 3 times a day right now. That's how much they're being used.
You can't charge them while they're in your head?
No, because they're wireless. How would you do that?
Like this?
Well, then you're not wireless anymore.
Well, I know you're not wireless, but like you can charge them while you're using them. So if you're sitting there, if you're like wandering around all over your house, but like if you're just sitting there at a computer, it would just look like you have headphones with wires in.
No, nope.
I don't know,
anyway, so they were very confused why I spent so much time on the phone, and so then I let them listen to one of the things, and like my daughter was like, "That's the most boring thing in the world, Dad. I would never do this." It's like, well, you better get a better education than I did.
Today's a big day for me. My it's my first night letting my plants sleep outside all by themselves. I took out. I think when I bought the building for the last company, or for my father and I's company before we sold everything. When we bought the building that we had, the newest building before we sold that, there was a bunch of bakery stuff in there, and I got all these old aluminum cookie sheets, but they're the big ones. They're like 36 inches, something like that. They're huge. And so I use those to carry trays of Soho cups with plants in them. And so I've got sunflowers and a whole bunch of plants and stuff that are out in the little greenhouse that I got now for the first time. Like it's just getting to the edge where I can start hardening the plants up a little bit with the cold and let them cool down overnight and warm back up and everything. So it's like, I'm going to go out there and take a look in the morning with a nice hot coffee in my hand, and hopefully it'll be good news and it won't be all shriveled. And
I didn't realize, like, as you called it, hardening them was a thing. Like making them more hardy.
Like God. You're kind of like God. You got to harden their hearts.
Yeah.
You can't let them go.
It's more like Elsa, and I'll just freeze your freaking heart.
She doesn't freeze your heart though. What the heck are you talking about? Elsa's like the nicest person in the world.
Elsa froze Anna's heart, man. That's the whole reason the first movie happened.
No. It's not the reason the first movie happened. She was trying to protect her and didn't realize that her best friend didn't need protecting.
Yeah. And she went, and she zapped her right in her heart and froze it.
Yeah.
Anyways.
And then she fixed it.
Yeah.
That's not the point of the first movie. You got to think deeper, man. A little bit deeper. You got to use a little bit more statistical analysis here, buddy.
Nah. Not unfrozen. I just turned my brain off on that one.
I don't know. Actually, that's one of my more favorite, which is not a real word, by the way, but that's one of my favorite Disney movies, actually. And the second one, I didn't like quite as much. It was okay. I liked the first one a lot better. But like the way the movie was written, how they handled a lot of it, the only thing that they could have probably done better is add a little bit more variety in the cast. But other than that, that movie sung all sorts of like songs of how Disney has improved. Because I mean, like we went back and watched Mulan and we watched Pocahontas the other day, and it was just like, oh, this is so like there's so much horrible things in these movies.
Yeah, well, that one is particularly bad. Like that is just cringeworthy. The entire thing, the whole story is like, it's like people telling romantic stories about Sacagawea when they Lewis and Clark went across the they crossed the country. Like it's like talking about the romantic Sacagawea carrying her baby all the way across, and it's like, oh, it was so nice and great. It's like no, that was an absolutely horrifying story if you actually know anything about it. Like those kinds of things, like they butter it up, and like the Pocahontas and John Smith stuff was also particularly brutal, and so the Disney version of that's always interesting. I just like basically I'm the home gardening and movies with my girls. That's kind of my world, but like I kind of check out in some of those movies. I've never liked them when I was younger. I didn't Disney, and so like I have the same kind of like crawly feeling up my back when I'm sitting there listening to a Disney movie. It's just as best I can to stay away.
Fair enough. For those that are on lockdown too, just like we are, I did the Netflix with a friend thing, and I'll tell you, I'm a little disappointed. I did, yeah. I'm a little disappointed because it doesn't have audio with it. So like you could chat with it. So like the idea is so they don't have to have Netflix. That's really the biggest idea. But how many people don't have Netflix nowadays? But you could essentially hit play at the exact same time, and as long as your internet, I mean, even if your internet lags, it's not going to be any different, right? And so the idea I thought is that you would be able to have an audio channel with it, and you'd all be able to talk to each other.
Yeah, I figured it would be like it would be something like this, like we have here. If you don't have a camera on your, some TVs have cameras on them now, but like if you don't have that, it would just be like a microphone on the TV that would pick up like, oh, that's so funny, like, but it's not. It's just like
they have a chat dialogue box, so it's kind of like this. You don't have a picture. You watch the movie together. One person controls it. It has a chat box where you could talk to each other. And so like my buddy and I was just like, do you want me to call you? He's like, yeah. So we just called, and because my AirPods, are two separate pieces, I just put the one in the one ear where he normally would sit like on the couch. And like when he talked, it was almost kind of like he was there. He made sure when he opened his beer cans, it was loud enough for me to hear. And when I poured another scotch, it was like, okay, hey, we're kind of hanging out here. And I was like, hey, you should go get your bottle of whiskey and we'll do a shot together, kind of like when we hang out. And then we did, and that was kind of different. But we watched the movie together, and it was at first, half the time you don't spend watching the movie, and then we were making fun of the movie after a while. We watched Apostle, which I actually recommend everybody should watch, weirdly enough, because it's a movie about this guy going back and finding his sister in a cult. And it's not like it's feel good, everybody's gonna have a great time ending and stuff like that. And so I'll be honest, it's forewarning, it is graphic. It's pretty graphically violent. Not as graphic as like some of the video games I play, but it is pretty graphic. But the big thing is because my buddy and I play this game called Mansions of Madness, and I don't know if you've ever heard of it or not.
No.
Really?
No.
Was it a game or board game? Like a video game or board game? Okay, board game.
It's a board game. And I can't believe nobody's ever watched it. Hold on, I'll bring it up. It's a Fantasy Flight board game, and essentially it's kind of like a scripted D&D, right? You have a pre-built story that you get to watch, and they have like the new one has like an interactive thing for it. You get a board and you get all these little cool pieces, and they have like a whole storyline. If you give me a sec, I bet there's probably some images of it. Yeah, so here you go. Like here's the.
So it looks like Cthulhu in the corner.
Yeah, because it's essentially the whole base premise of this is all based on that type of lore, right? So it's all that Lovecraftian lore, and it's all very demonic based and stuff like that. But there's missions, right, where you have to like go fight the cult villagers. So there's the extra thing. Here you go. Here's this right here. Now these are painted figures. These people are fancy. And these are like big doors. These don't exist. Somebody created those.
That's cool.
But that's essentially what it is. And so like I know it looks like Clue, but it's not. But essentially it's a story that you go on and you have to make the right decisions. You have to do it in a certain time frame, basically to beat some sort of dark lord or dark entity. So it all has like evil cultish type premises to it. Mm-hmm. And this is a good picture right here. That's is what it actually
you would run into.
Yeah,
if you're not.
This is exactly mine.
Although if you're in a quarantine, you could make doors and paint your people.
I could. I'm pretty lazy and I hate painting and I'm not very good at it. So here's a picture. There you go. So they've got it on the screen for their little laptop here. And that's probably what's playing the sounds. And it's the new edition. The new second edition is all iPad driven. All the stories are on there. All the DLCs. The first edition, you had like an actual dungeon master that controlled the whole game. So now you don't have to do that, which is really nice. And they integrate the old and the new. Anyway, long story short, the idea behind what we were watching this show or this movie called Apostle, and this guy's going onto this island where he knows they're a cult to rescue his sister. It's exactly like this game we're playing, except for we're watching it. You know,
That's cool.
So it's pretty neat.
And so you basically you didn't really like the Netflix and group. What's it called? Netflix Live or something? Netflix Party. Yeah, and it's just like I'm guessing it's like, is it like a QWERTY keyboard that you have to like click over to a word? Like, you know what I mean? Like it takes forever. Like when you do a search on like an Apple TV or something, it takes forever.
If you did it on your TV, yes. Like I just hooked my laptop right up to it, and I had a wireless keyboard. But then when I called my buddy, we had no reason to chat. Like it was pointless at that point. And like Streamyard, and that's what I told him. I was like, Streamyard's the perfect thing to do this, really, because in reality, Streamyard plays the music. You can all hear it. You could turn your cameras off. We could do all of this the same.
That's what I mean.
Way.
Like I was thinking that it would, like the Netflix thing would somehow like connect you to multimedia in some way, so that it would be like a hangout or whatever. So
that's what I mean.
That's what they should have tried to do, but like they were probably limited in like people's bandwidth and whether or not they have hardware and all that kind of stuff. But
yeah,
I don't know. I mean,
it was fun.
Yeah, I got a phone call from a friend that he's out in DC yesterday, and so like I haven't talked to this guy in a long time. It's like we talked on the phone for a while. It was cool. Like just catching up with people that you don't talk to that much. It is important to like have that a moment, a little while of just catching up and like communicating and getting back with people, because like even if it's that weird little Netflix thing or something along those lines, like just having some of those things, it's kind of important just to keep your social whatever up. Because I mean, I'm home with my kids. I got two of these things that are running around all over the place, and my wife and I, you know, we have our moments, and when the kids go to bed, we can sit down and watch some TV or something like that. But like we're very different as far as like the things we're interested in, video games and, you know, the TV shows and stuff that we like or whatever. So like it's still like someone that I can talk like some crazy politics or whatever with. Like this show, this kind of podcasting stuff is a huge like boost for just keeping my brain functioning in times where it's a little bit monotonous under all of these like, you know, just overweighing dramatic things that are happening in society to just like weight down. So like you can just shoot the BS with some friends. It's like it is an important thing. Like in the week, just one night a week, we get to just goof off for a minute.
Yeah. The other thing you can do too, and I guess we're a little off topic. Topic. We're all off.
We didn't exactly have a topic, so I think we're good.
But you know, there's a couple of other things you can do too, like my family and I did Zoom, and like I don't know if anybody has Jackbox Party. Have you ever heard of that?
I've heard of it, but I've never played it.
I love Jackbox. It's so much fun.
So those are really awesome, and all you need is a cell phone, essentially, which most people, but one of my friends has. He has a flip phone still.
What?
Anyway, yeah, he does. Yeah, he refuses. He refuses. We'll put it that way. So they have these cool little party games, and you can actually use Zoom. Zoom is pretty much free. And if somebody has this right now, you could play one of these party games online. Now, I will tell you the only downside is if you use your computer to talk through, it mutes the audio in Zoom for some reason, and I don't know how to fix it. But if somebody has this, like on Steam or Switch or anything, you can play this. You can stream your screen so everybody can see it, and then you can have a conversation and talk to all the people like you're in the room. And because everybody's using their own cell phone, you know, it's pretty much like there's nothing different, right?
Yeah, you just can't see each other.
You just can't see you're not sitting in the same room, so you can't see each other.
Oh, it looks like you're running into some lag again. Yeah, he's a lagged out. So I don't know, Keith. Do you have you done like party games? Have you been doing any kind of like reach out stuff like what he's doing in this?
No,
That isn't something
I
that I
don't.
really don't do too
Well,
much
a lot
either.
of a lot of my friends all have kids nowadays, so they basically the outreach that we have is just like we'll call each other and we'll talk for 10-15 minutes or however long the kid lets them have peace and quiet.
Yeah.
Which, you're a parent, so you're more familiar with how that works than I do. And so it's mostly just my wife and I, and like I said, my work's been we're one of the few industries that's thriving right now. We actually had to hire a couple of new people just so we could keep up with the demand. And no, I haven't, but I have in the past tried like watching Netflix with a girl I was seeing a long time ago. She lived somewhere outside of the city, and she was like, it would be really cute if we Skyped and Netflixed and whatnot. I was like, okay, fine, whatever. So we did that, but yeah, it was definitely nowhere near as sophisticated as what we got now.
Yeah, I just for me, like people always just like, oh, you play online or whatever, and it's like I always tried to make my my screen name doesn't play well with others, and usually it's got too many characters. So there's something about like we had a friend of ours, my wife and I, that when she was in college, and she's a gamer with board games, and so like that was her thing. Whenever like people came over and did something with her, it was always board gaming at her house or something like that when we went over there. So like that was cool and all, but it was just for me, it's never been something that like I usually gravitate towards. So if someone else takes the reins and can kind of coordinate the evening, then that's pretty fun. But I don't usually like group things like that. Like this podcasting, like communication or debates or whatever, like that's as far as I've ever really gone to, like, to specifically look to get a group thing going. I don't know. Google Hangouts and stuff was the beginning of that for me, and that's like a party chat, like phone where you can like get like 4 of your friends on and you can all have a chat. Like I just never. I don't know.
You gotta, yeah. It all depends on how many people you like and want to talk to all at once. Because after there's a certain threshold where it goes from being just like you're chatting with friends to it's just sheer chaos, and you're just like, oh my god, are Aerosmith and the Backstreet Boys both playing at the same time?
Yeah. Or the other end, where people are like, you hear that like intake of breath, like, yeah, like it's over. We're done. We should be done now. Like all of
yeah. That is like the universal sign for this conversation's pretty much done.
Yeah. When you're talking to someone at work or whatever, and like they slowly start to back away, and like, yeah, it's just like, yeah, okay, we're gonna go do something else now. I guess we're done talking. But anyways, looks like Tanner is reset, redone, redoing whatever it is he's doing. So
so we could just I guess we can kind of start carrying on without him. I mean, we'll miss him dearly.
Yeah, I'll pour some out from a dead homie, and
I'm gonna drink it.
So what we kind of basically wanted to do is the conspiracy theories, because it's kind of fun to talk about that. We haven't done like a conspiracy theory show in a long time, and I'll skip over Chris's. He had an interaction with someone that was interesting, and so I put a couple of things together for conspiracy theories. That one of the ones that he linked is The Atlantic, and The Atlantic magazine and their website and their podcast are things I highly recommend as things that are very, very trustworthy and accurate. And they do have a left lean. They can be a little bit more liberal than anything, but The Atlantic is definitely a good link. And so this analysis covering potential conspiracy theories and stuff like that I thought was pretty interesting, and so I'm guessing Chris, where did you get that Atlantic link? Was that part of all of the stuff that was going on with your friend, or is that something that you just kind of landed on?
That was something I just landed on.
Anyways, I mentioned that you had like an interaction with someone and you had some numbers. Did you want to start with that, or do you want to go into one of these other links on there? Because you pretty much had the thread and some math, and so I figured that might be the way to start into conspiracy of what's
thread and math and a corkboard.
Yeah.
Yeah, I felt like I needed to have a whiteboard up right? That's kind of like what it felt like. And so what the whole thing is that I had a Facebook friend I didn't know was on there. He must not be very active. He hasn't showed up in almost forever.
He used to be a regular troll, like all the time troll.
Yeah, and he's from our atheist analysis days, right? So I completely forgot he existed. Did not know he existed in any way, shape, or form. And he had and I don't know if I can bring this up or not. I don't know how to do this. But essentially, he had a thread, and I'm kind of like, I don't know if I want to because I don't want my system to crash.
We'll just describe it. It's pretty straightforward. So he essentially had a post where it was a question.
Yeah, and so his question was 0.01% of the U.S. population has died from this virus so far. Is my math correct? And so on like the initial term, you wouldn't care, right? Like you just wouldn't care. It wouldn't be a big thing. But at the exact same time, you do care if it's a conspiracy theory. And the only reason I looked into it is because I was like, why would anybody pose this question, right? Like, what's the point? What's the logic behind why I want to pose this question?
Is it a logic pump? Is he looking for someone to say something so that he can basically go, ha ha? And so that's what my first thought was when I saw it.
Well, that's what I thought too. But in the long run, I don't think that's actually what he was doing. I think he was being passive aggressive in his statement, right? And if you read through the thread, they talk about, he kind of essentially goes, well, if it's only 1% of people that, or 0.01% of people that die, and I have a 99.99% chance of living, why would I care? I'm going to go back to work. And so that sums up the reason he essentially wanted that post. But he had all these crazy nut jobs come back out on his post that essentially were like, oh, well, it's only that the death, it's that high if you use all deaths of those people who died and test positive. Some of those positive deaths didn't die of COVID. Well, you don't know what you're talking about. We covered this, 2 weeks ago when we had Abby on. We debunked that then. I'm not going to debunk it now. Not going to do that. And so that there was that aspect to it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so with that aspect, that's the other thing that I had a question on, right? Is okay, if you're going to say this, why? Right? And then, if you're not going to say this, then who are you trying to drag into this conversation? And so what happened was people were posting that. They then talked about, well, 25,000 deaths and is only like 0.007%. So it's not even 0.01%. It's not even 1%, and essentially, well, Bill Gates is just trying to make $7 trillion on this and vaccine manufacturers and all these other things. And it's like, oh my God, like you got to fucking be kidding me. And so one guy wanted to argue about the pandemic, right?
As to whether or not it is a pandemic.
Yes, one guy wanted to argue that. And that one is not as, that one's a little harder to argue only because of the fact that technically we haven't had enough time to see if everything would happen. But even to that guy, and we'll get into that guy first, I guess, because he's the easy one.
Mm-hmm.
If you look at statistics, and what do statistics tell us? You can't just say, okay, well, I've had a month and a half and I've had this many deaths and this many cases. Let's equate it out to the exact same amount of time. Oh, we're only going to have 25 million cases versus 500 million with the Spanish. Well, you don't understand like a curve analysis. You don't understand, like, are we at a peak? Are we not at a peak? What happens if we didn't have this? Oh, did you take into account the fact that we have different sanitation processes that we didn't have back then? We have these now. Yeah. We didn't have them back then. And there's all sorts of things that you're not taking in. They're not taking into account.
Well, there's also just the semantics of the word. The word pandemic means a disease prevalent over a whole country or the world. You select the region, but like usually they'll say that, there's a massive disease or there's an outbreak for countries. This is a global problem. Like it's all over. the entire planet, and it's not as crazy intense as it could have been because we have technology now, and we have communication, and we have the internet. We told everybody, hey guys, this sucks, it's coming your way, how about you start trying to stop it? Like you know what I mean? Like, it's not like back in the day when these kinds of pandemics used to happen, it was like, wow, there's a whole lot of dead people getting drug out of that area, and then 4 or 5 weeks later, the same thing would happen to another city because maybe they didn't send a messenger saying, hey, this is a problem, because they didn't really understand the germ theory of disease and all kinds of other things. But like the word itself, that guy saying this isn't a pandemic, he's wrong by the definition of the word. That's the thing. It's like word definitions, the language itself, it doesn't care about your feelings. It's just like science. It doesn't care about your feelings. So like he's initially wrong just because he's using language incorrectly. And that frustrates me too.
Yeah. Well, his definition, it says a wide geographic area and affecting an exceptionally high proportion of the population. And I said, well, then define exceptionally. Like, you aren't defining it. You have to actually define something. Exceptional. What does that mean? To me, exceptional could mean 25 fucking people. How about them apples? 25 people die out of 25. Is that exceptional? Come on. And that's my problem is if you don't know what exceptional is and you can't define it, you can't.
By having a quantitative number on it is part of his problem. Like that's something that I mean, it could be a tiny number, but if it was your grandmother, it can be an exceptional loss. You know what I mean? Like it's not. That's the CDC itself does not have anything to do on their website for anything that has to do with the number of people who get sick, because it could be herpes. We might not have people dying all over the place, but like there could be thousands of people just covered in in sores, like or whatever. That's an incredibly contagious thing. Those kinds of situations. There might not be too many people that die, but that still would be a pandemic if it was everywhere, all over the place. And so like. Exceptional losses, those kinds of quantitative things, like they're important to analyze how bad things are, but like it's not something that's part of the classification of what something is. Like how bad this pandemic is, then that's an answer. But just saying, is this a pandemic based on the number of people?
And that's what pisses me off is, and like the responses to me is, well, here you go. I'm not going to get hung up on this. Like, there's a lot of people that die of heart disease and a lot of people that die of deaths, but I'm not going to get hung up on it. And if you want to shut something down because it's just another respiratory virus, you go ahead. So how many, and again, maybe Keith knows, but how many fucking fallacies did you just quote to me? Like, and I don't even have time to address all this. Like, I literally I was honestly, the way this whole thing started was some guy showed up, he had that post, I trolled a little bit, and then I started randomly trolling the other people on there. And I'll be honest, I did it on purpose because it's like, fuck you, I'm done with this shit. I'm not going to put up with this, and I'm just going to defriend you anyway. So I might as well troll you a little bit. Because another one of the comments I said is, y'all might be drinking the Kool-Aid a little bit, and Jim Jones would be, happy about it. And I'll be honest, that was me being pretty aggressive. And like that's me being an asshole, but still.
And to be fair. To be fair, the total death rate, it's in total deaths in the States is 40,666 as of a little bit ago, according to the live coronavirus map you guys shared a while back here. So I've just been using that. So yeah, now the rate is maybe only 25,000 deaths. Well, actually, it's over 40,000 numbnuts. So there's that. Yeah. And
so like the time it took to get from 25 to 40, pretty quick.
Yes.
Yeah, well, that's how it works. But yeah, no, this is a complete and total ignorance of statistics. Like, you can't count the entire population and say that, well, this is the death rate. Well, no, that's not how fatal the disease is. You can only talk about the death rate of a disease by comparing the disease to itself. Like, you can't just sit there and say, well, of all these people, only X amount died, therefore that's the death rate of this condition. Okay, well, 3 people die by getting mauled by a bear, so that's 3 people out of the entire population versus 3 people out of 3 people who ran into a bear died. It's not the overall risk, it's the relative risk, because overall, like, yeah, sure, how many people are actually going to run into a wild bear? Not that many.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's so infuriating that people just sit there and, like, reading some of these comments. I'm sitting here and I'm going, you are really proud of your ignorance and your misinterpretation. Like, you are genuinely masturbating to the thought of how smart you think you aren't.
Yeah. And this guy named Tim Broom is the one that pissed me off the most. And he actually, I went on his Facebook and he's deleted my comments. If you go on this guy's Facebook, and I don't care, Tim Broom, you could go on his Facebook. I don't care. You could say, hey, Tanner told me to tell you. I don't care. But I went on his Facebook and I specifically went after some of his posts. But after a while, I realized he only has 2 or 3 people liking any of his posts at any time. So it was wasting my time. It's like, I don't need your 2 or 3 person audience, Our podcast is bigger than that. But the funny thing is with that whole thing is his whole point was I told him, you don't understand statistics. This is absolutely ridiculous. This is a conspiracy theory. Do you not understand that they're not inflating numbers for the deaths? And instead, all he does is go, well, there's only currently 16,000 deaths in the population of basically 333 million people in the U.S. Mm-hmm. And he says that's a 0.0002. And I said, well, you're not comparing it right. So if they're right, when I looked this up, there was 40,566 confirmed deaths in the United States. There is 764,177 confirmed infections in the United States. Ratio of death to infection, right, is 0.053%. So essentially almost 5.5% death rate right now, which is still lower than the Spanish flu. I will admit that is technically lower than the Spanish flu, but this is only 3 months in. First day of confirmed death was February 29th. Current date today is 35 days later at 4/19 when we're recording this. And again, these numbers are going to be different because we're pre-recording this like a week in advance. Influenza deaths last year was 34,200. And that was a population of 35.5 million people were infected last year from the flu. So the common flu, 35.5 million people, 34,200 people confirmed death, right? What did I say our COVID deaths were as of the date when I looked this up? 40,566. We already are over the amount of deaths for this flu that we were last year, right? So now we're going to sit here and say, well, the death versus infection rate is 0.00097. So not even 0.1% is it of the deaths of a flu versus this one. And what did I say our rate of deaths for this infection?
The ratio
for corona
is 0.05.
Sorry.
So it's 5.3%.
Yeah. The other one is less than 0.1%.
Mm-hmm.
Less than 0.1%. And this is where, like you were saying earlier, this is where you get crazy. This is where I get on a soapbox. This is where I get really preachy. And it's only because my wife works in healthcare. My sister-in-law works in healthcare. My other sister-in-law works in healthcare. My ex-sister-in-law works in healthcare. I have elderly grandparents who were working, who are no longer working. I have friends and family that work in fast food, that work in Meyer, that do all these different things. They have to go in this harm risk, right? And they're putting themselves in risk for fucking people that are so stupid they can't even understand what statistics are, understand how statistics work. And this is the big thing here, right? Here it is, folks. If you're going to sit here and just compare statistical numbers in the long run of things, let's at least try and compare as close to apples, because we're still missing how many different things. We're missing a weighted curve to understand how quickly this has spread versus how the flu spread, right? We're missing the fact that we don't have a prediction model of if we hadn't flattened the curve, where the fuck we would be at. We flattened the curve. Folks, that's a reality. You have flattened the curve by staying at home. Even if you want to complain about it on Facebook or you want to go protest at the Capitol. It's not like we've had a protest every day at the Capitol. It's not like all these people are out there doing crazy stuff. In Michigan, we're one of the lowest states to have people traveling. We are, by GPS data, which is a little scary. It's a little scary, I'll be honest. But again, that's how you get to know whether or not there's a red highway in front of you when you got your GPS on your phone going. So. There you go. Exactly. Convenience. And 100%. And so because of the fact that no one's taking any of those things, they were not taking any of those things into account here. Plus the fact that it's only been 35 days in the United States and the first death You do not understand how the fuck statistics work. And if you want to understand it, go fucking take a class. Go do that. I took classes.
That's going to be too much to ask from them. But basically what I like to do is use a big number, scale it up a little bit. So just on the numbers that you had in there, that's essentially 5.3%. So I said, okay, cool. So let's do this then. If you don't think it's that big deal, let everybody just get it. If you said, okay, there's a totality, everyone in the country gets it. That's 17.4 million people that die. That's what happens if you let this thing grow completely into complete in totality. That's the weight. That would be entire states of people potentially that would die. Yeah. Like that's a huge chunk, and that number there. That's with the protective measures that we put into place. I bet you that death rate would probably be over 10% if we hadn't just completely and totally ignored this thing across the board, and we hadn't started producing ventilators, and GM hadn't gone out of its way to start boosting a lot of that productive value because the companies in healthcare couldn't come anywhere near those kinds of numbers because they're not scaled to mass production or whatever. Like all of these things that we've done have reduced that number. That number will be really high, and we're going to actually see that in Africa real soon. Because those countries don't have any resources in a lot of places. They just don't. And that is going to be right now I've been hearing that people are just essentially, should we quarantine or should we go to work because we have no food? So like one's a slow death, one's a quick death. It's insane. And so like the people that are making these arguments about the inconvenience of not being able to be home because reframing the question or whatever, this is such a weird thing to be yelling about. But I did enjoy the fact that it was a bunch of white guys with beards at the Capitol. Who would have thought? Yeah. And guns. White guns, because the guns are going to help kill the viruses or shoot the police. And here's the irony of that, right? How many, if a bunch of black people had showed up with guns, how many do you think would have been arrested?
110%.
It would have been an episode of South Park. They're coming right for us. It would have been bad. It would have been really bad.
Exactly. And we don't have to get into the whole racist thing tonight. I mean,
but it's there.
It's there. And it's funny because, we lock people up in cages, and yet here we are demanding that we be able to go buy freaking supplies at stores, right? You lock humans into cages. Yeah, I saw the meme, and I'm not as for the meme. I think the meme is a little silly, but at the exact same time, the logic in it is very prominent, saying, again, I hate memes. I guess I just hate memes. But the logic in it is very prominent, saying, we took other people's freedoms away because they crossed the border, and now we shoved them in cages. We fed them crap. We overpopulated or overput them in a or we put them in a area where it's overpopulated for what they were, right? And now you want to complain that you can't fucking go to buy stuff in person. You can still buy garden supplies. You just can't buy them in person at your Lowe's. Oh, you want to complain you can't go sit at a bar and drink with your friend. I mean, come on, folks.
I know.
Like I told my buddy before we shut down, I said, if you would like to come live at my house, we'll set the basement up. We'll get a bed down there or something. You can come sleep on the couch. You can do whatever, but you have to stay at the house, be quarantined at my house. And you're welcome to hang out with me for the next 3 months. I don't care.
That's a whole lot of Tanner.
You get
it's not a whole lot of Tanner. It's a whole lot of kids. It's not me. I mean, can you imagine? My daughters are if you think I'm overly friendly, both of my daughters are very overly friendly, and they will want you to participate and play with them and hang out with them when you're around. So if you want,
at least kids are fun.
Sometimes,
It gets intense, bro.
My daughters today were upset that I was using the TV to play my video game instead of them being able to play theirs. And they came up to me and said, "Hey, Dad, you want to play this game?" And I was like, "Sure." We call it Psychotic. And I was like, okay. And they're like, "All right, so we're just going to randomly say things, and that's the game." All right.
Is there their attempt at psychological warfare to get you out of the room?
Yeah, they were like, "You got to come in the kitchen though and play with us, or let's go outside and play with it," in an effort to get me away from the TV. And again, I don't know if it means that they're going to get me away. I mean, they probably just want to spend time with me. That's fine. Like we had a picnic outside tonight. They wanted a picnic. I hate sitting on the ground. I am very opposed to it. I'm fat and I don't like sitting on the ground because it's uncomfortable. But, we all went outside and we had I grilled turkey burgers and hot dogs and sausages and made some stuffed mushrooms, and I had some zucchinis and some summer squash and a lot of stuffed mushrooms because it's very good. And you know, we sat outside and ate, and then they played on the tramp, and I laid on the ground for a little while because it was hard to get up. And then they asked, you know, they had to ask me if I was too drunk, and I said, no, honey, I've not had anything to drink tonight, but thank you for asking. You know, I just can't get my butt off the ground because it's hurt. And then the dog came out and decided to play, and then after that I had to get up because otherwise the dog was going to lay on top of me.
The dog's like, hey, take a look at my butt. Take a look at my butt. Woo! Yeah.
That's my butt.
Yeah. Or I was just licking my butt, and I'm gonna lick your face. Yeah. Yeah. If you're down there, at eye level, man, you're in the danger zone.
Well, my one dog will come hug you. My one dog will come hug you and then yell at the kids for playing on the tramp. She's a border collie and she'll circle my tramp like incessantly until they get off the tramp. She can't stand it. My other dog doesn't care. He's gonna come and he's gonna lick your face, and then he's gonna come drop sticks in your lap until you play fetch with him. Or get up and do something. That's just the way he is, you know. And he's my dog that loves everybody being home. And he's gonna hate it when we're all not home. My other one, my border collie, she would rather us not be here. She just wants one person here that doesn't touch her, that leaves her alone. You know. Yeah, she's used to the other dog being locked up, and now the other dog's not locked up all day. So now she has to share her territory with him.
I saw like a cat. I was just gonna say I saw a two sides editorial that said it had a dog and a cat both making arguments. The dog was like, "You should stay home, work from home forever," and then the cat was like, "You should totally go back to work." And it was just like that's exactly how that would work.
One of our cats, she doesn't care. Like she spends most of her day sleeping, and she's 15 years old now, so she's really doesn't do much of anything, and so she's, as long as people aren't like picking her up, poking her, prodding her, whatever, she's like, okay, whatever, people. So she doesn't really care. The other one, he's loving this because he loves to have the door open, because what we'll do is we've got him on a harness, and we'll just tie that harness to a post so he can sit in the front doorway while it's open, and we don't have to worry about him leaving or anything like that. We can keep an eye on him, but he's just, this is the greatest thing ever for him. And he's starting to get really spoiled because he'll just walk around the house meowing for attention now, and then as soon as he's got it, he kind of gives you the look of, okay, are we going? And then he'll start to move toward the door, and if you follow, he'll go to the door and be like, okay, let's go, come on, it's time to go outside. And it's like, no, you don't get to do that. It's cold. Spring finally just started to rear its beautiful face, and we don't know how much longer that's going to last.
Yeah,
because winter finally just ended here, because Canada.
Well, it's okay. It's still snowing in America, buddy. So, it's not really that much different. So,
okay, listen, we have a stereotype. We have very few of them, but we cling to them dearly.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Anyway, so, we could get into the statistical numbers if we want to that I presented. I'm going to say we probably don't need to. We could probably just move on to the next conspiracy theory, because in reality, all of our stuff will be in the main section of this post. You can look at it anytime you want. And I kind of sequestered all the links that I had put together. And if you really want my diatribe, I'll send you my diatribe. Message me or send us an email at cellardoorskeptics@gmail.com. Make sure you don't you want to be a part of the group and then give a fake name or a fake email address, because I just delete those. I get those and I have no idea whether they're real or not. I just delete them. I just assume they're all fake. Because they don't ever, if your name says I'm Christopher Jim, and then your email address says in 28/4/10/12, I just go, no, that's fake. I'm done.
Yeah.
I don't even care. Put a message in there.
Yeah. So then the next one is it's getting weird quickly. Is probably the best way to describe that one. This is going deep into the heart of China's information control. It's from the Atlantic, and we were talking about this before we started the show. That the Atlantic magazine, podcast, and the website itself is a safe haven for it's left leaning, but it does a good job being centrist as far as the argumentations that it puts forth. Their podcast is really nice. They bring on people that they genuinely don't agree with, and I enjoy listening to that. And this article it's pretty intense. It's basically bringing on the the China had they have dubbed it, and this was the first I had heard that they had dubbed the coronavirus the USA virus, kind of like Donald Trump calls it the China virus. And it's a little weird seeing two sides just kind of like, no, it's your fault.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like it feels a bit childish, but when we talk about the number of people who are going to see something and they see a headline, that's as far as they go. You can condition everything. One of the things that I usually bring up on whenever I'm talking about information control, everybody obviously knows 1984. And if you haven't read it, you should, because it's a really important thing that's happening right now as far as information control. But the letters to a young contrarian from Christopher Hitchens, there's a thing in it. It's this just one quick thing here is pretty much how I always refer to information padding and changing what you're getting. He has on page 73, he says, I'm sure that you are partially armored and most intelligent people are against this kind of thing. Everybody knows that the question can be loaded. Everybody knows that the sample can be weighted. Everybody knows the intelligibility of the question depending on the commonplace and the regnant assumptions. It's a mark of sophistication to understand that that's strange. Actually, it doesn't have the rest of the page in there for some reason. Google Books failed. But it's a mark of sophistication to understand the information that's coming through in the polls. And then basically finishes out that thought. He says, everything is compromised by passive dress rehearsals. The polls themselves condition the polls. And so, like, what we're basically talking about is that information gets put out, and that information it cascades into, iterations. So something can go viral, and each time it's reiterated into the system with small changes, you can literally control the narrative and control the results of questionnaires, the opinion that people eventually come out with over time by just little pokes and little microaggressions in certain directions. And it seems that this article is talking about is that China has essentially mass produced that kind of information warfare. And I'm uncomfortable reading it, but I'm glad I read it because it's something that I didn't know they were working as sophisticated as they have. I have always thinking that they were using a blunt object, but it seems like they're starting to use a scalpel, and that's when they change their game to something a little closer akin to like what we do here in the U.S. with the NSA and a lot of that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and that's that's a funny thing. I don't know. It's the people that are saying, hey, it's the Chinese media complaining about this, and we have this whole media state, right, where people are speculating and people are claiming China's doing this or that, and then people are going after the WHO, which we aren't going to get into tonight. We're not touching that conspiracy theory for now. Oh. But a lot of people are blaming the WHO,
Who?
World Health Organization.
The band on stage, who?
Yeah, I didn't know. Yeah. I usually call it the WHO. That way, people are like, "What?"
No, I like who better.
Who are you?
It's funner. It's more fun. There you go. Correct.
Yeah, okay. So from this moment on, we shall be referring to the World Health Organization as the WHO instead of the WHO, and that is just like a disclaimer for people.
The WHO.
The Who?
Get some Who music playing. Anyway, I don't even like Who.
So yeah,
I hate Who actually. I really don't like that. Anyway, we're gonna otherwise we'll get another tangent. I do not like that band.
It's a Christopher tangent.
Yeah. So yeah. Well, I told you it'd be a tangent cast. So, anyway, so the idea with this, this article was they're talking about state-sponsored media, and I thought it was interesting to kind of read that other side, right? And the Chinese government has been struggling with perception, right? And that's a big thing, and it's kind of funny because I have a friend that he's an atheist too, right? He's pretty young. He has dual bachelor's degrees. He does a lot of study in politics personally for himself. And, he brought this up to me that, hey, was the Chinese government hiding a bunch of deaths on purpose, right? To do this. And that's not, now it's coming to light that it's not quite a conspiracy theory per se, but there's some stuff behind it. But at the exact same time, how much of a elaboration is there compared to what it was before? And that's why I brought this in here, is because I think it's imperative that we look at both sides, right? And as we look at where this crisis began, who wants to see the crisis? Did foreign policy stop anything? Is there persuasion and information management in China that allowed for this to happen? And did their propaganda stop, some of the people from caring about it? I mean, I would say maybe that has some influence. I would say the biggest influence is that we had a health committee that got disbanded or got stripped down to the bare essentials, right?
Yeah, there was a CDC oversight committee in China that had been stationed there during the Obama administration, and I mean that position was either resigned, they were fired, they shut that part down. I'm not entirely certain exactly what caused the termination, but there are all kinds of positions throughout the administration and all the diplomatic areas where this kind of oversight is part of the job. And those positions haven't been filled. They've just that diplomacy angle and communication and relationship angle from the United States to all the other countries. It doesn't exist anymore. And this is a great example of 2020 hindsight, that it would have been super, super smart for Trump to keep that. And he just did not do it.
The other thing, and the other thing that this article was talking about too is like they're sitting here saying, hey, look, these are our hashtags. Unity is strength, combat the coronavirus, right? And then they started running attack ads in March against, Trump and his use of the Chinese virus, right?
Yeah.
And I know we already talked a little bit about it, but the difference is that should they be bothering to waste their news coverage on that? I don't know. It seems kind of silly to waste it by getting people angry. But at the exact same time, I don't know how else you combat that. Because, I mean, in fairness, we're the ones that elected him. And he can't seem to not say that. And like the funny thing is every time somebody says it, and we had a friend, Jeremiah Bannister, who had this Catholic guy on his podcast. And like, I messaged in the thing is like, it's not the Chinese virus. Stop saying it. And it wasn't Jeremiah that was saying it. It's just like this other Catholic dude. And it's like, what does it hurt you to not say that? What is actually harming you as an individual to not say that? Like I get your point that maybe you think it originated there, but there's not a lot of proof that demonstrates that it specifically originated there. That's just where the first outbreak happened. And in fairness, if we're able to test and go back and figure out how to retro test for this, we might find that this is wave 2, and that we already had a wave 1 that happened, and wave 2 got stronger. We don't know. There's a lot of things.
There could be a whole bunch of things that can happen. The analysis that I've been hearing and the genome breakdown that they're saying that it does not appear that any kind of manipulation or any kinds of things are in there that would have been quick jumps. So if it was something that basically in the genome, if there's a whole bunch of tiny little pieces, they leave a trail to kind of the current state of affairs. So if you use something like CRISPR, if you edit the genome in some way, shape, or form, like a lot of people are saying that testing facility in Wuhan is the center of where this thing was created. Like if you do something like that, it leaves a huge breadcrumb in the genome, in the genetic makeup of this virus. And those kinds of things, like they stand out more than a sore thumb. It's like a big giant red light. And so they've sequenced this thing. They've sequenced it, and either the entire medical community and scientific community in the United States is all together on some kind of conspiracy, or there's probably nothing wild and crazy inside that genome that points towards human manipulation. There may be all kinds of reasons, underlying reasons, that it may have started there or started somewhere else, but there's no evidence that I've seen or heard, and I guarantee you it would be all over the opposition party's news for the United States. So the Democrats and everybody would be posting that this is definitely and totally something that was manufactured and should have been taken care of or whatever. And I would think even the Republicans and conservatives would also hold on to that, like to say, listen, this is not a natural thing. There's blame to be had. And I think that's what some people are looking to do, is like they like being able to put blame on something. They like it being a combative thing. I think it's one of the reasons why we've seen the narrative move away from whether or not this disease is so dangerous and whether or not it's okay for the government to tell you that you have to stay at home. Like the news hasn't been talking about and scientific information or new discoveries from the front lines of COVID. I haven't heard about it recently. It's all been who's fighting to stay at home and who's fighting to be able to go out. Like that's what we're arguing about now, not whether or not there's information manipulation happening for the story of what's happening here or the origins.
Yeah. Well, exactly. And that's what this article is talking about, because in the past, China has done that. Their state media has done that. And they've created what they call like a populist theory of power events, where they're creating these articles that do these different things, essentially to make themselves look good and the other people look bad. And I get that's a huge, powerful tactic that, in my opinion, should never be happen.
But we do it here too.
Well, we do.
No, Russia does it for you guys. Come on.
I know. Yeah,
well, you're right.
Soviet Russia, we propaganda you.
Yeah.
But that's the idea here, right? Is that where has Trump taken his playbook from?
Dictators.
Nobody wants to say he's taken it from China, but to some extent, if we look at what China has done to get their people on his side, we're seeing the exact same things happen in America. And that's why, in my opinion, this article is extremely relevant. And the fact that the information war that we're seeing here is because of the fact that we have certain people throwing agendas around. Nobody wants to commit to anything, and people want to ignore the truth, because Trump's agenda is, I have an issue with the economy not being open. I'm not making any money. I can't hold up my promises. And in the long run, he doesn't give two fucks as long as he doesn't die. All he gives a crap about is the fact that he's going to look good as a president in the end of this.
And if he can get reelected, like it really is. So like how he looks at the situation and he says, what can I do that can benefit my reelection? And by all standards and all historical markers from his presidency and all of his political maneuvering, if he can make it a fight, him versus something, he usually can get positive spin from that, and that helps his base and helps people think that, like he's the outsider fighting the system. Like he has to make it a fight. He has to make it a fight about something. And so what's he done? He's picked fights with the governors. He's changing the narrative to make it look like he is the guy fighting for people who are stuck at home due to his own decree that we shouldn't open anything up until May 1st. Just like he's fighting himself essentially, and he's flipped it onto the governors or whatever. And so like that is information control, information padding. We still have a very strong independent, if you want to call it independent news structure in the United States. But after an economic downturn as big as this one, watching small businesses and small news networks fold like houses of cards, where the people that have tons of money are just going to scoop up all of that existing material, and it's going to be even more centralized. And so like all these kinds of cascading events are going to basically make the American news media similar to what they were talking with the Chinese, saying that they have an average viewer base of roughly 99 million when CNN has 32 and Fox has 18. So that's the scope that China has essentially centralized its news and its media system. The U.S. is potentially heading that way in the future. I mean, I guarantee you Donald Trump would do that. If he can create state media that was that powerful, so that he had the Trump news or the White House news or whatever he was trying to do for a while there, and it just never really took off. But if that blew up, he would love it. I guarantee he would blow it.
It never worked because it was just like 24-hour footage of guerrilla documentaries. So
and NPR commercials with that lady just like stroking ARs and stuff.
Ooh, wait, what?
Yeah. All right, we're gonna definitely move on from stroking ARs, and we will talk about.
You're not my real dad.
Yeah, we'll talk about Bill Gates here.
I can't believe Bill Gates has turned into the lightning rod that he is. Have you guys been hearing that stuff?
It's hilarious how just utterly amazing this is becoming. Like they're just going after Bill Gates. This is just total conspiracy mongering too. This is how they operate. Is you have one tiny little fact that you can twist to fit your preconceived narrative and your bias and everything, and then suddenly everything else just falls into place and supports it somehow, even when it disproves it, because somehow the disproof is proof.
And on top of that, it's confirmation bias. Like if you look for something hard enough, you will find the things you're looking for in most cases, or you'll find things that kind of sort of point to the things you're looking for. And so you'll get, I mean, if you're looking for patterns, the human brain is very, very good at finding those kinds of patterns. I mean, like people have so if you're familiar with the Ghost in the Shell series at all, the television show that they had. Standalone complex.
I know about it. I just never really.
This has nothing to do with Ghost in the Shell. It's just the concept of a standalone complex is something that I really, really like. It's one of the coolest things I've ever seen as far as any kind of television. And this here feels like a standalone complex. So a standalone complex is essentially a full-on event, a series of copycats where something turns into something that's real. And it's all over the place, and it can even be something that's taken advantage of by people who realize that they can use this to their advantage. But in the end, there was never a central actual thing that started it. So it something went viral, and in that thing that went viral never actually existed. And so, like Bill Gates being some kind of negative force for population control and vaccine manipulation and chipping humans and all whatever crazy thing, like the initial spark, the center, there's literally no actual like nugget of truth that they're starting from on this. It's just this weird amalgamation of a whole bunch of correlations with no causation that I find interesting. Like they've been talking about how Bill Gates in his past, I mean, he went to Harvard, I believe, wasn't it? He's a Harvard dropout. I think that's what it was. And it's one of those. What it is like when you're going to a place like that. Yeah, he went to Harvard. So like, pre-law major, but he did mathematics graduate level computer science course as well at Harvard. And regardless of when you're just getting into that club, like just being in that building, like you rub shoulders with people, and in the end, the information, the facts that you're getting at a place like that they're not any better than any other facts anywhere else. But what you're getting the relationships in the network with people that are exclusive and unconnectable. You cannot talk to these people. But when you go to a place like Harvard, you can. So he rubs shoulders with people like the Rothschilds. Who'd have thunk, huh? And his connection with that, and saying that one of the Rothschild patriarchs gave him some advice, and he learned a whole bunch from this guy. That happens at places like Harvard and Yale, and so that little tiny tidbit is saying like the Rothschilds, the full-on Illuminati.
Well, and the problem is always that bias always just goes one way, never the other. Like it never applies to all the Trumper fans who are, super, super into Trump. But the second you point out his connections to various people, oh, no, that, downplayed or ignored completely because a jingle of keys. And it's absolute proof that most conspiracy theories are nothing more than bias and wanton suspicion. Like, just for example, when COVID first started really taking traction, about a week before all the recommendations for self-isolation, self-quarantine, and people staying home from work, etc., started, one of my coworkers, who I know she's a little bit out there, but she's all in all, she seems to be fairly down to earth. And she was saying how her husband was talking to a coworker who showed him a video that they proved that it was a released bioweapon. And I just looked at her and I was just like, well, that's dumb. And she just didn't know how to respond. And I'm like, this is a woman who her office is right beside my cubicle. So we chit chat a fair bit during the day, shoot the shit. And she's just kind of giving me this look. And she goes, what? And I said, that is the dumbest idea for a bioweapon ever. Like, a virus is just wildfire. You have no control.
Well,
and she's like, well, I don't know. Like, it seems pretty convincing. Like, don't you think? And I'm going, no, I don't think like that, because I don't see any logic behind it. And she goes, well, like population control. I'm like, there are easier ways of doing that. There are easier ways of reducing our population without doing something that is that has so much not just collateral damage, but can come back and kill you too.
That's what I was gonna say. It's like the to do population control. This is like a Thanos level population control. Just half of everything. You know what I mean? Like it's an indiscriminate population control, and people in power who could choose or control something like that, and Bill Gates could choose and control something like that with his wealth. If he really, really, really wanted to, he would pick something. Like he would have some kind of criteria. He wouldn't just be like, we got to get rid of 1 billion, and then I'll turn it off once a billion are gone.
Yeah. Like, and I really have I don't believe like our technology would even be good enough to have something like where we could control a virus like this anyways. But that's a whole other topic for discussion. So it's just the conspiracy minds behind it. It's just as soon as something happens, oh, what? Like how long does it take for a big school shooting to happen that, all of these conspiracy theorists are sitting there going, nope, false flag, don't false flag, don't false flag. And it's like, what? They're coming for our guns. Yeah? How's that happening? Isn't your boy Trump in office? Well, and the conspiracy theories always seem to fall in on themselves, but they're propped up by the pain of cognitive dissonance.
Well, that and it's like the cognitive dissonance, where it's like the two mutually exclusive things, and like being able to hold those things. So like to be able to say that that weapons of mass destruction could still be in Iraq, and there weren't any when we went there and searched, and the Iraq war was a mistake. Like those two are mutually exclusive, and but some people can believe both of those things at the same time. And like what I'm seeing is that they see a small correlation somewhere, some tiny thing, and since they're grasping at straws and trying to prove a big, giant, incredibly complex conspiracy, that Occam's razor usually removes all of these really small, simple things because they're just not strong enough to make an argument. But if you are looking for any kind of positive correlation, and if you find a bunch of little tiny ones and you stack it all up and you go, aha, then you believe by that fallacious argument that you are actually creating a real argument. And that's a mistake, that we don't teach. We don't teach really those kinds of things in school, the argumentative theory and stuff like that. And so like it's not a surprise that this is. So like one of the things that in the CNBC article that we have linked here says, for example, this is an example of how one of the coronavirus things that they're saying that conspiracy theorists have also seized the fact that Gates has been outspoken about broader threat a global pandemic could pose for several years. And so they think, okay, so the guy who's in charge of the Gates Foundation, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, that regularly deals with vaccinating people all over the world, deals with medical issues, deals with those kinds of things, and overpopulation problems in certain areas where there is no infrastructure to keep those people alive, etc. They said that Bill Gates had a TED Talk in 2015. He stockpiled food in his basement to prepare for a pandemic. In 2015, he warned people that an infectious virus was a greater risk to humanity than a nuclear war. And that speech has been seen 25 million times in YouTube in recent weeks, according to the New York Times, and various anti-vaccination groups, including conspiracy group QAnon, now reportedly cite the video as supposed evidence that Gates' foreknowledge of the event. You know what I mean? Like, that's such a small thing that a guy who regularly deals with biological everything in malaria and what was the Z one? Zika and whatever, any area where the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation is working, it's constantly trying to help people that are dealing with these kinds of things. And he sees that as like a real threat. And I would agree with him that is more dangerous or more likely to be a danger than nuclear war, in my opinion. I really do. Yeah. Because nuclear war is one of those things where it's just like we wave our guns around, but we never actually use them. And so like it's a currency more than it is an actual threat, having nuclear weapons everywhere. And like that's mutually assured destruction and can come back to hurt you even more. And so seeing like I personally would have chosen climate change as the biggest threat, but I still would say that without question that a pandemic is more dangerous than nuclear war. I mean, that is not even close.
I mean, I think climate change is, but I think in this context, he was basically saying, like, in the short term, a worldwide pandemic would be more dangerous than climate change. Like, let's not understate the dangers of climate change. Like, it's very real. It's very much happening right now. However, a pandemic is going to do a lot more harm in the short term because global warming is happening on the geological timescale, just accelerated, which is still, a slower process because it's a huge system we're dealing with, as opposed to a virus, which can hop from person to person rather quickly, as it's proving. I mean, worldwide, how many people are we looking at? We're looking at over almost 2.5 million confirmed cases, and that's in 4 months. 4 months to get 2.5 million people. Over 160,000 people have died worldwide from this. 40,000 of those in the United States alone. 23,000 in Italy.
But Bill Gates put some food in his basement, and he kind of sort of thought a virus would be a big deal.
It's so funny because, like, how many of those people who would use that argument are preppers themselves, have stockpiles.
Did QAnon tell you something?
Yeah, so we're sitting there. We have to sit there and be like, "Oh, well, are you prepared? Well, then you clearly must know something, so you're in on it."
Yeah, we should arrest you because you obviously have insider knowledge of an upcoming terrorist attack. I
love to reductio ad absurdum these types of arguments, just because it's the only way to handle some of these.
It's frustrating. So, like, the Bill Gates stuff is so, like, we've talked about, like, the Bill Gates stuff being ridiculous, and so the issue. And the biggest thing is on the other one that I put in our document and our resources. Roger Stone, a lizard that just won't die.
Allegedly, he's allegedly a lizard.
Allegedly, he's a sick lizard.
But he retweeted or was reposting information that says that Bill Gates may have had a hand in the creation of coronavirus so that he could plant microchips in people's heads. Like, this guy, like, Roger Stone is held up as, like, a martyr to the cause for a very big chunk of the United States population, way bigger than you would think they would be. And, like, they think that he's, like, this he's unfairly attacked and going to prison soon because of, the liberal elite system, the deep state that couldn't handle the fact that he was, part of the Trump administration or whatever kind of crazy thing that, like, this guy. And so what does he do? He does something like this, which just stokes this fire so unbelievably that, I mean, when you would say something like Bill Gates wants to microchip people. I mean, Bill Gates obviously is part of a futuristic world where he would probably think that technology would be a benefit. And he probably sees a lot of countries dealing with, his foundation in Africa and places like that where overpopulation in certain areas is a real big problem. There's no food. They can't, all kinds of stuff. Giving women contraceptives to reduce birth rates, it has been shown consistently all over the world to increase quality of life everywhere. And it's like, okay, well, since he supports that, then he would probably want a computer chip your brain or whatever, the argument is there. It's just Stone in one little dumb thing with his privilege and whatever else that he has, it's going to cause, who knows what, how much butterfly effect damage.
Exactly. And I think that's what people don't see.
And how would it exactly, like, the thing that I want to know is, is there any sort of critical thinking that goes into, okay, well, how would this work? What sort of steps would have to go towards this? Or is it based on, well, you just don't know, therefore paranoia? And in that case, that's just a society-based paranoia or series of generalized anxiety, because there's really nothing that you're worried about, so you're worried about everything.
Yeah, well, I mean, right? People like Philip K. Dick saw people in the shadows everywhere. I mean, there are weird things that happen to people who are looking for things in the shadows, and that's part of that.
But his books are pretty cool, man.
Yes,
like come on.
I've never read an author who better manifested a feeling of paranoia through print than him. I've reading some of it, like Ubik is one of the best ones. I mentioned this many times. Is one of my favorite ones. That, like, the paranoia and, like, chaos. He was just, because he was living it. Like, you write what you know, right? And so, it was just intense, like that level of paranoia. And I think that kind of paranoia, like you meet people in your life and they kind of go down a rabbit hole in some way, shape, or form, and you're like, how did you get that far from where we were? Like, how are you that far away?
That's
whatever.
The first question
all of them.
And like,
how many drugs did you do?
So
yes.
People get down a little rabbit hole, and like they hold a few people in esteem, and Trump and his cohorts get a lot of that kind of benefit. And so like if Roger Stone doing this one thing, they're like, oh, he's connected to the guys that have a connection to the inside. This is probably true information because he wasn't supposed to leak it, but the liberals want to keep it under wraps or what. I mean, like it goes crazy after a while, and you find yourself like it's going to be related to some of the stuff that we've talked about with like not being susceptible to so much information and fake news and creating an immune system to it. I don't know, this Roger Stone thing, like one dumb little thing, dude. I mean, there's one thing. The amount of damage and danger that it can potentially encompass is astounding.
Yeah, and that's what people don't realize, is in their power, right? What's in your power? What power do you have that you hold over people? And when we talk about different things, in terms of like we look at Trump or whatever, and we say, what power do you hold over people? And people want to know, well, who cares if he says this or that? But these are the things, again, we go back to that first article that affect things. Philip K. Dick, how much politics did he affect? I mean, when did he write, what is it? Man in the Castle or something like that?
Yeah, The Man in the High Castle.
Yeah. When was that written?
It was late 80s.
Yeah. So, I mean, like, the prevalence of it is there, but it's not the same as if it had been written, in the 40s or the 30s or something like that,
Mm-hmm.
And he probably would have been a little bit more right about some of this stuff anyway, which is probably where he got the inspiration from the book. But, or think of that, what is it? I think it's William Gibson that does Neuromancer.
Mm-hmm.
That's who that is, right? Which,
yep.
I love that book, weirdly enough.
Me
I
too.
tried to get through the second one. Not my thing, but
yeah, it is a really good book.
The first one's really good. And you look at it and you go, what influence does he have over how we believe? Well, we would argue that he should be able to do what he wants, when he wants, say what he wants, how he wants to say it in a book form, and that's great. But the difference is when if he were to run for president, let's say, we might want to be a little scared because he's going to take some of that thing. Just kind of like, what's your favorite author, Keith, the guy that does Game of Thrones? What's your favorite author name?
George R.R. Martin.
Yeah. Can you imagine if that guy ran for president? I mean, I like his political views, right? But at the exact same time, do I really want a guy that thinks, he could take 20 years between books to be president? I mean, it'll be like one bill, and then he'll be like, I'm done, folks. I'm going to my cabin. I got to write another one. I'll see you in like 4 years.
6 months. 6 months before I tell you about a breath I took. Yeah, that's the problem with like the whole idea of you want to have a likable politician. No, you want to have a career politician. I mean, obviously corruption is a problem and that needs to be addressed. But this is a conversation I have with one of my coworkers where it's like, who do you want in office? Well, I want somebody who knows what the fuck they're doing. I don't want, somebody who has failed how many business ventures to try to run a country, because number one, a business is not the same as a country. You're balancing a budget for a country is not the same as budgeting a balance for yourself, for a house, for a business. It's not. It's really not. And to sit there and try to make it seem like it is pure just ignorance. Like, I don't really understand economics as well as I could or should, but I know that running a country's economy is not the same as me trying to make sure that I've got food on my table, that I can pay my heating, that I can pay my water, that I've got a little bit of a savings, and that I'm starting to save for retirement and all that garbage. It's not the same. You want to make sure you've got somebody in there who knows what the fuck they're doing, because then you get, hi, I'm Trump. I got little hands. They're huge. They're huge.
It's one of the things that I've seen for, it's changed my mind a little bit over the years for term limits, is when you have turnover in positions that require some expertise, If you turn over enough, you're going to have just essentially a workforce full of people who are the first year of is them coming up to speed and getting to learn what their job is. Well, in the House of Representative positions, they have an election every 2 years. And so, like, the first term is just them learning how to do stuff. Hopefully their staff is good, and hopefully they are career staffers. Just like there are some things to the idea of Plato's philosopher kings. I mean, it's not a completely terrible idea if you have experts that are in charge of things. Whether or not you need to groom them from childbirth and all that kind of stuff, that gets a little weird. But like having experts in positions that they're in charge of, Anthony Fauci being in charge of medical decision making during a pandemic, that's a good thing.
That's a good idea.
He should totally be there. Having Jared Kushner in charge of the Middle East peace process should not be happening.
That's dumb as shit.
Yeah. And he's now on the new task force for solving the coronavirus thing. Like, that's a level of expertise. That's a level of the uniform expert they used to have. I mean, if you remember back in the day, like people like Whaler in mathematics, they just knew all the math. Like just like a guy that was just like the guy who knew all of the things. That doesn't exist anymore because we have so much information that you literally can't know.
Come on,
like
we have a guy that knows everything. He tells you every day. He's the best at his job. He knows it all. He could be right. He could be wrong.
Which of your trolls is this?
Trump.
Him. Oh, yeah.
Come on. I mean, every day he tells you how good a job he's doing and how good he's directing his administration and how they could never fail and that things he doesn't know could happen.
Or if you ask a nasty question.
Yeah, but if you ask a nasty question, it doesn't matter if you're Fox News anymore.
if you are questioning the dear leader, if you are pushing back, you become the enemy, and no, those are direct schematics for dictatorial behavior. The last conspiracy that they have is the 5G that I put in there, and it's interesting, the 5G situation, because it's kind of like a misunderstanding on an issue with people not really understanding what radiation is and whether or not ionized or deionized radiation or non-ionized radiation. And like these are important things that people just don't really understand, that are making the argument saying that this 5G stuff, one, that the 5G is causing the corona. That one's really out there. But like the 5G stuff being involved in corona kind of tied into the two links that I have on here. One from Forbes. So Forbes is usually a pretty reliable, and this one is, Forbes magazine is a conservative magazine, obviously caters towards CEOs and people in positions of power, and they usually have more conservative perspectives. And this one is good, and it does question some things, whether or not it says it's almost certainly safe for humans. There are some things in it. What it is basically just kind of pads the whole thing with, we don't really know yet. But it looks pretty good based on the information. And then the next one I had, digital trends. That's one of the best ones I found to explain exactly what's going on, what radiation is, what ionized radiation is, what your cell phone's doing. If you want to be safe, if you're worried about those kinds of things, check out those two links, because the 5G argument essentially is that it's a little bit different. The amounts that are allowable, it's different than 2G, 3G, and 4G have been. And so people are like, what? They're changing the numbers so they can humans can absorb more of this radiation, and we're definitely gonna get a cancer from it, or whatever their arguments are down their slippery slope. And there is some information that needs to be discovered, but this is brand new technology. But it's definitely not going to be something where it's going to be like controlling these viral things now. That's not an area where this kind of information is going to be.
If they up the limit, right? They still got to test it. They can't just arbitrarily up the limit. That's what people don't get. It's not like somebody's like,
but you can't
our money. I'm going to do this. Oh, hey guys, what's up the limit?
But you can't just magically manifest a 10-year study on the effects of organic material too. So like, there's a limit.
Something that just came out.
There's a limit to the amount of long-term testing. And so
you're right. But
what they usually do is they just put this stuff right next to a trailer park with poor people, and then they just watch those people's lives.
Okay, that sounds conspiracy theory in and of itself. They don't do that, my friend.
I know.
There's no proof of that. No, I'm pretty sure.
So what they can't put a long-term study in is basically what they're saying. They need to be 100% certain.
You're right. And that we should be doing those types of things. But if we look at probability statistics, we can explain probability statistics.
Mm-hmm.
And you can say, why did they set the original limit? And you can go back and look at previous studies and understand, what did previous studies do for us? So is there a previous study that said if we up it 10%, that they have a 10% higher cancer rate? If they do, then you're right, we should be questioning it. If they don't, then come on, you can't just, people can't just, look, you're going to get cancer from almost anything. Do you have a microwave in your fucking house?
Well, that's
back to your microwave.
Do you breathe? Do you drink water? Do you spend time in the sun?
Do you eat food that's not normal? Right? Do you eat processed foods? I mean, there's all sorts of things that could affect it and that they've done some studies on. The problem I have with this whole thing is that you can't sit there and say all of a sudden we should be more cautious because of 5G. No, that's not the answer. The answer is what is previous studies talked about? What's the probability of those things? But it's even crazier to take the leap to say that's what's causing COVID. Because have we ever had a precedent where any sort of things have happened where it's caused a virus before? They've caused cancer to some extent, right? But have they ever caused an actual virus?
Yeah,
not a virus. I mean, there's like the thalidomide thing.
Yeah, that was basically they pretty much, what was it? They thought it was a medicine they were giving women and it killed all their kids or deformed their children.
Yeah.
And then they also used to do thalidomide was a sedative drug discovered in the end of the 50s, which caused a worldwide tragedy. Prescribed to many pregnant women in order to relieve pregnancy, nausea, and ended up deforming their children. And then something very similar to it with radon. Radon used to be considered a miraculous cure because it would actually kind of sort of make you feel a little bit better. Mm-hmm. And so they put it in elixirs and people were drinking it, and then it also glows, and so they were using it to put the dials on airplanes so they would be able to see the meters and everything. So they would lick the brush to get it to a point and dip it in the radon, draw the line, and then they would re-lick the brush to straighten it out again, then dip it back in the radon to do the next line. And so all the people who worked in these production lines, their jaws fell off. Essentially, they got cancer of the face and died. It was that insane. And so like those cases are like complete and totally unregulated cases from the past where there was no CDC, there was no EPA, there was no toxicology program with all of these things that we have in place now that are monitoring all of this information. So one of the things in the Digital Trends article that I thought was really, really cool is the Environmental Protection Agency and the U.S. National Toxicology Program also have not formally classified RF radiation as cancer causing. And meanwhile, the World Health Organization, International Agency for Research on Cancer, classifies RF radiation as possibly carcinogenic to humans. So due to the finding a possible link in at least one study between cell phone use and a specific type of brain tumor, however, the IARC considers evidence limited. And so, but it's also the kicker here is that it's also important to note that the IARC puts coffee and talc-based body powder in the same category as possibly carcinogenic. So this, I don't want to say that they're overly skeptical or they're overly worried about stuff, but to me, the IARC seems to be going with the online version of what do I have? It could be a cold, you could have a respiratory infection, or you could have lung cancer. Like, you know what I mean? Yeah. Like that kind of logical argument there, and so like. There is stuff that they don't know. There are people that are hedging their bets. They're not saying it's totally and 100% safe, and they're not saying that like there's we actually think this is cancerous. They were talking the cases, the studies that they've had for 2G and 3G RF radiation led to cancerous heart tumor development in male rats, but in those studies, they were experienced to like freakish levels, things that a level that your cell phone could never achieve. And like, you don't have like 30 of these things taped to your body at all time, like operating at full, you know what I mean? Like, it's one of those things that like even the maximum levels that we have in our society, the level of exposure that we would get is still going to be low. And so
it's negligible.
Yeah, it's like radiation when you fly in an airplane. People were worried about getting X-rays in a doctor's office, and they're worried about getting an MRI and getting all kinds of radiation from that. When you fly in an airplane, it's like getting like 10 X-rays. I mean, it's a ton. And so like Tanner flies all the time. I was just like, man, that guy's got to be. You're
quarantine is good for him.
Yeah, you're like one weird flight from like, I don't know,
turning into a monster.
He's gonna be the Michigander Hulk.
He's not gonna be Hulk. I don't want to be Hulk. I don't like Hulk.
Okay, well,
too bad you don't get to control what radiation does to your body.
Would you rather be Dr. Doom then?
What?
Would you rather be Dr. Doom then, and you can get some gamma radiations for the Fantastic Four?
Maybe. I was thinking more along the lines of Spider-Man, if we're gonna have to like do that. But really, in reality, like I'd rather be Superman because he has like ultimate, like his one
original
thing
Superman
is
or current Superman. The original Superman was just super strong.
Like the current one.
He didn't fly.
Yeah, he was just from a planet that had. Well, I think it was.
Yeah, I don't want super
10
strength.
times. It was like just 10 times the Earth's gravity, so he could jump over a building.
I don't need that.
Punch real hard. Yeah.
I mean, I would like the laser beams and the ability to fly. Like, I like the laser eye thing. Just like I don't like Superman as a whole, but like I like the laser eye beam type thing, and like I mean, it'd be kind of fun, and it would be nice to be able to fly, so I can't get any more radiation. Right? I could just fly. Like, oh, I'm going to Texas today.
I would bet you probably get more radiation if you were just completely unprotected flying through the sky.
Yeah.
But remember, kryptonite's my only problem. So it doesn't matter. You can radiate me all you want.
Yeah.
But if it doesn't got kryptonite in it, it's okay. Yeah. If I were Spider-Man and he radiated me, I'd have a problem because then at that point, you're getting too much radiation. I'm going to mutate into an actual spider, and that's no good.
And then you would just you would be like, I feel weird, Mr. Stark.
Anyway,
so, 5G it's pretty much what I feel. I don't see any reason why I could even classify it as something that could potentially be dangerous but because more than likely the information that they're going to do in long-term studies is probably going to be conclusive that it is safe. If I had a giant box full of transmitters right above my house, I would probably not like that, just because I don't know if I want to be that close to a giant power source or something. But like where they're setting these things a certain distance from people, I don't see any reason to be worried. But pending new evidence, the scientific method could change its mind, and it could also change mine if there's evidence to the contrary.
Yeah, you know what the funny thing is here? And this is a little sidetracky, but here's the funny thing. A conspiracy thing that I was reading is the reason they're saying they're causing it, they go, well, why are these people having to put towers up and adjust the towers right now? Doesn't you think it's awkward that if we're in the middle of a pandemic, these people are going up there and adjusting towers? And I was like, and you're the same asshole that turns around and says, oh, we should go back to work. Well, fuck, they're claiming they're essential. They're basically found a way around the system to be able to do this. And yet you're going to sit here and complain about it. But yet at the exact same time, now you think it's causing the coronavirus. Like, yep, good job. Way to put the two arguments together, folks. Like I'm you're a special breed.
I'm working in my company in fuel systems. So what part of the conspiracy am I working on?
My company does stuff for Home Depot. Therefore, we're part of our company's designated essential because it's Home Depot.
Yeah, I mean, it's just whatever layer of it. So, like, if you're working, you're part of the conspiracy. I mean, like, if you grasp for straws long enough and you seek patterns hard enough, you'll find something. And that's what I see when I see this 5G stuff. It's just people don't know yet, and when there's gaps in our mind, we don't know the origin of the universe. Therefore, something had to have done it. Therefore, a creator. I mean, humans love to put things where there's a gap. If there's a hole somewhere, we're going to fill it with something. And often we just fill it with shit. So, I I don't know. That's pretty much the conspiracy lane for me. I think I've had enough of that. I think I need to go take a cold shower. I think that's enough of conspiracies for tonight. I'd like to dig into a quick save unless you guys had anything else on crazy people on the internet.
No, I was starting to develop a headache just going over some of the articles before, and I'm just like, oh god, and I'm like, you know what?
But it's good. It's good to look at it. I mean, I'm subscribed to the subreddit conspiracy. The reason is because I need to see some of this stuff every once in a while to remind me why
how wild and outlandish things can get,
and just to like remind me to, hey, dude, you need to watch what you're reading. You need to pay attention to who's doing what and how and where, and like
just remember that you either die a hero or live long enough to see yourself become the villain. Just remember that. I don't know how it applies to this. I think there's some twisting around of the words, but just be careful. We don't want to lose you.
Okay, Harvey.
That's not hard. But okay, moving on because Hanna can't even get his Batman references correct.
Harvey Dent said that in the movie.
Yeah, in The Dark Knight, he said that in the movie. He was the one who said that.
No, Commissioner Gordon said that.
Commissioner Gordon said that?
Yeah.
Hang on.
All right. Anyway, let's move on to quick saves before we go down a rabbit hole that's another 20 minutes. So
I'm Googling this while you guys get to your quick saves.
Yep. And then I'm just gonna kick you up before you can admit it, so that way I don't have to say I was wrong. So my quick save is
hey, guess what? Hanna was right.
I know I am. He says it at the dinner table when they're
scones with the Russian ballerinas.
Yeah.
Anyway,
continue.
So, moving on.
Extinct apples.
So given the fact that I worked at a farmer's market, I find apple breeds and all those different things very fun. And the big thing that I had here was the fact that there is 10 older types of apples. They call them Pioneer era, that people thought were extinct, and they found them in forgotten orchards in the Northwest.
That's awesome. Something about those the newer apples, like they don't propagate from seed. So like the older ones that are a little bit more natural, whatever they can. That's pretty cool. I've been trying to put like find heirloom corn and things like that. So I don't know, it looks like Chris managed to get his Pioneer apple quick save in, but that might be the end of it for him. My pick was there are these, I called them zombie chainsaw protection pants, but if you check out the link, these are pants for people who work with chainsaws on a regular basis. It's a Husqvarna, and they put this material inside the pants so that if a chainsaw blade cuts, it pulls the fibers out of the pants, and they're like these long stringy fibers that will jam up the chainsaw blade. It'll block the driver from being able to get in there and do anything, and it stops it from cutting. You're gonna get cut. You're gonna need some stitches, but like it might not go all the way to the bone and start getting into the marrow.
I'll take stitches and a few weeks of recovery over losing a leg. Yeah,
and like I saw that and I was like, that's some cool engineering. Yeah. And in fact I saw it in my current favorite subreddit, which is engineering porn. It's just a happy place. It's a happy place for weirdos like me who love things like Tensengritty or whatever that floating table that I talked about last week, like all that kind of stuff. Tensengritty, yeah, that's really popular right now. I've seen a whole bunch of stuff, but anyways, like a cool engineering feat. Someone was like, listen, because there was a guy that was like, his wife walked up behind him and she was like, hey, and he like whipped the chainsaw up and like stabbed her with it and she died. Like, huh. But like people creating ways to protect people in dangerous situations, I'm always for it, because I've got a bunch of scars all over my body from wipeouts and accidents, and I work with my hands, so my hands are a gnarly set of clubs. But like that kind of technology is pretty cool. I thought it was a really cool thing. Like just like these pants that just puke out fibers that will stop a chainsaw. Did you have anything, Keith, or just?
I mean, I didn't, but I think to kind of stall and riff a little while we wait for a Tantan to come back here. I mean, I guess I can kind of. I'll add one, because this is something that's been sitting on my desktop for a little bit here. So this is from Vanity Fair, like April 1st. On the previous Tuesday's Jimmy Kimmel Live, Samuel L. Jackson debuted a new version of the popular children's book, Go the Fuck to Sleep.
Oh, you know what
it's called? Stay the fuck at home.
Yeah.
And I gotta tell you, if Sammy J is telling you that you've gotta go fucking do something, you should probably do it. He seems like a guy who kind of knows what he's talking about. I mean, he put together one of the greatest teams of superheroes. He's contributed a lot to culture and society.
He straightened Christina Ricci out when she was all nasty, and so he chained her to a radiator.
Exactly, and it's all the little
he
things
fought the
that
snakes on the plane.
The motherfucking snakes on the motherfucking plane. But, so it looks like Tanner's ready to go.
He's back in some way, shape, or form. So
he wants you to end us.
End us. I have to end us. We are all going to get coronavirus, and we are all going to die, I guess. So that's pretty much what it is for me. Is I don't know if he even has the ability to end it, but basically, check us out if you like the show. This was kind of a lighthearted, have a fun show. We've been so dark and deep, I guess. I guess everything that political and the country's been dealing with. So we were just kind of have a couple of chuckles here. So you can come see us every week, where we have some episodes that are going to be pre-recorded here and there, kind of a buffer for an emergency. But usually you can find us every Sunday, 9:30, 10 o'clock, and it'll be live on Facebook. Yeah, it'll be live on Facebook, and we can find us on Spreaker.com, and we have our Twitter and our Facebook page and the major social media areas. And so without any further ado, we're going to start our outro, and we will see you guys all next week.
Bye.